Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Wave Network and the Sports Corner with the Conn Man. I am your host, the Conn Man, and I'm very excited and very kind of emotional on tonight's show is because I'm gonna give a tribute to the NBA and the history of the NBA, and of course I want to thank the network because as you can see, I have the Sports Wave Network brand. I got the gear on. It's legit. It is the bomb. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. What I really wanted to do was discuss the basics of the NBA history, and that's what I guess I'm known for. I guess that's what I made my claim to fame, if you want to call it any fame at all. And I usually don't wear hats, but I got a big head. But anyway, as you can see, the hat's pretty nice. Everything's pretty smooth. Thanks to Jake Silver and the Sports Wave Network. We doing a damn thing, y'all. Y'all need to get you one, man. It is the bomb. But getting back to what I originally wanted to talk about, and I have no guest today. My guest is me because I claim that I'm this historian. I claim I'm this, I'm that, and in reality, I'm not. You know, I always thought I was. I always thought that you know, Con, you know your stuff, which I do, and there's nobody better. But the point is, I'm not a historian. After meeting with Sam Jones and him sitting down, well, him talking to me for an hour and 45 minutes, I am no historian. I just love the game, and I know the game, and I know what I know. And I take that claim away from me right off the get go. So, what I wanted to do today was discuss a little bit of Black History Month and my tribute to Black History Month, and some things that you may or may not know that I know. I've been, I guess, I've been following the NBA since 1967. I was 7 years old, and don't ask me why, but for some reason I was gravitated towards the NBA, and I just loved the way the players played. And that was in tribute to my dad, by the way, Billy Conn, and which is why I'm called the Conn Man. And I wanted to really come out and talk to y'all about the history of the NBA because some things you may or may not know. NBA now, as you can see, there's no Google here. NBA was founded in 1946 in New York City. It was not originally called the NBA. It was called the BAA, Basketball Associates of America. That's number one. And you know, the at that time, they established all white league, of course, and there were no black players even thought about. And they wanted to form a league to represent basketball and etc. And that was cool, I guess, back in the day, I guess. And then all of a sudden, there were some ball players who ended up going and playing in various colleges. And I'll name some names, which I'm going to give you some questions. So hope you all tune in because I'm going to hit you up. Because, my dad was a trivia king, and he always taught us about trivia and things of that nature. And I guess I just took it upon myself to, keep the tradition alive. So I would always ask trivia questions, and people would always, well, okay, Con, what you get today? What you get today? And of course, there was no Google, no nothing like that back in the day. So I was like considered the trivia king, which I proudly accepted. And it's the real deal. But what I wanted to do again is talk about the NBA. First originated in 1946 out of New York City. And again, a whole bunch of owners got together and decided to form a league. There was originally only 8 teams in the NBA. As you can see, no Google here. And they decided to form a league of 8 teams. And what they decided to do was, of course, only white players. And somehow, now here's where the thing gets a little tricky because during that time, a little bit after that time, there were some ball players who, uh, of course, there was segregation back in the day and all that, but there were some ball players who ended up going to various colleges and doing very well. And I'm going to probably say one of the very first. I'll talk about the first NBA ball players, which you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna go a little bit fast forward a little bit. There was a guy by the name of Bill Russell. Bill Russell went and attended the University of San Francisco. He played alongside a guy by the name of Casey Jones. They won two back-to-back championships out of the University of San Francisco. And there was a guy by the name of Red Auerbach, who was the coach of the Boston Celtics at that time. Now, Red Auerbach being Red Auerbach, now I'll tell you a little story about Red Auerbach and myself, which is very interesting. Uh, he decided he wanted to get Bill Russell. But the Celtics finished in the top seven. And at that time, they couldn't get that pick. And so Bill Russell was considered the best ball player to come out of the country at that time, out of the University of San Francisco. And so Bill Russell was wanted by quite a few people, but no, some, not really. Wait till I tell you what happened. What happened was there was a guy by the name of, he was the owner of the Rochester Royals, who had the second pick, not number one, they had the second pick. And, Bill Russell, again, was highly regarded. And Bill Outback said, look, I think I want this guy. So what he did was he went to his owner, which was a guy by the name of Walter Brown. Look it up. Walter Brown was like the man of uh, Boston area, and he also ran the Ice Capades. Check this out. He ran the Ice Capades. So Red Outback said, "Damn, let me see what I can do. I want to get Bill Russell. What can I do?" So he spoke. He knew he couldn't get the first pick, but he said, maybe I can get the second pick. So he contacted the owner of the Rochester Royals at that time and the newly formed NBA, which was in 1949, after 1946 was the original, but they changed the name in 1949. So he went to the owner of the Rochester Royals and he said, look, I want that pick. But the Celtics had the seventh pick in the draft. So he's like, well, how can I do this? So without back, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to speak to my owner, Walter Brown, and I'm going to see what we can do. Walter Brown, look it up. Walter Brown then went and talked to the owner of the. Now here I have to look at the name because I'm not too bright. I have a little bit of dementia. But he went to the owner of the Rochester Royals at that time, and he said, "Look, we want the second pick, and what we'll do in exchange is we'll give you the rights to check this out, y'all. Check it out. The Ice Capades. You heard me? The Ice Capades. Anybody who knows I'm talking the truth." And so the owner of the Rochester Road, because at that time, uh, Ice Capades were real big, and they sold out all the stadiums and all the the places big time, and that was way more, uh, I guess, profitable than the so-called NBA. So the owner of the Rochester Road said, "Okay, we can do this. I'll give you the second pick if you give me the Ice Capades." And the agreement was written on a napkin. Look it up. Look it up. Anyway, so that's how the infamous Bill Russell ended up going to the Celtics in exchange for Easy Ed Macaulay and a guy by the name of Cliff Hagan. Look it up. And anyway, that's how the Celtics were formed back in the day. And that's how the great Bill Russell was a Boston Celtics because he was never been a Boston Celtic. If Red Auerbach didn't take the initiative to go and contact the owner at that time, which was Walter Brown, and say, look, this is what we want to do. This is what We need this guy. And I think Bill Russell turned out to be a pretty good ball player for them, if I recall. I think he won 11 rings. Only lost once to Wilt Chamberlain, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But Bill Russell, you know, I was not a Boston uh, Celtic fan, and as you all know, I don't like Boston. BU, BC, BU, Boston College. I don't like nothing to do with Boston because of all the transgressions and all the racism that has appeared in the Boston area. So I do not like Boston at all. Never have, never will. Although I have to admit, I did like the Boston Red Sox in 1967 when George Scott played for the Boston Red Sox, number five. They used to call the Boom. Other than that, no. And oh, I have to make it true. One year, the Boston Celtics also acquired one of my famous idols by the name of Dave Bing. Dave Bing was one of the best players to ever come out of Washington, D.C. He played with the Detroit Pistons for so many years, and he ended up playing with Bird for one year. And the year after, I'm assuming he played with, no, let me get it right. He played the year before Bird came. He played with a whole bunch of players. They were terrible. And if he had stood one more year, he would have had the ability to play with Larry Bird. I guarantee you, ask him right now, he wish he would have stood in one more year. Uh, Pete Maravich was on that team, by the way, if you guys look back and check that out. But we're going back again. So, all right. So now we're going to go there. So Bill Russell ended up playing for the Celtics, and Wilt Chamberlain, who was my very first idol, he ended up playing after he went to the University of Kansas. He ended up going playing for the Harlem Globetrotters, which again you probably don't know. And you know, Russell ended up playing with the Celtics, and they had a great tradition. They had a great, damn, 11-year championship. So, which I do not like. You already know I do not like Boston at all. But you got to give credit where credit is due. Bill Russell, matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you guys a little quick story. This is what I wanted to do. I was about maybe like 9, 10, 11 years old, and I fell in love with Will Chamberlain. And my boys at the time were like, no, Bill Russell's way better than Will. I'm like, no, he wasn't. Yes, he was. I said, no, he wasn't. So while all these kids were going to various picnics and summer camps and all that, I went to the Bedford Public Library and I looked up microfilm. Who does that at 12 years old, 10, whatever? I looked up microfilm. Every single game that Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain played against each other. I can tell you, I got it memorized in my head. I got it all. Even though I'm old as dirt, I got it memorized. Will Chamberlain got 55 rebounds against Bill Russell. They lost the game, but he got 55 rebounds against Bill Russell. I can tell you, he averaged almost double than Russell. He averaged more rebounds than Russell, more block shots than Russell. Bill Russell even said he was better than he was. But anyway, so that's what I did at the age of 12. So there goes, I guess you can say, my history of the NBA. And I followed the NBA. And back then, of course, there were no TV stations back then. But I distinctly remember when I was like a little kid, and my parents would put me to bed, and I'd get up in the middle of the night or whatever it was, and I would listen to the games when Philadelphia played against the Celtics and all that. And you know what I used to do? I used to get out a scrapbook and I used to write down all points, rebounds, and I would listen to the game and I would write down not just them two, the whole players on both teams, and I rebound by so and so. I would write it down. Assist by I would do that, and that's kind of crazy to be honest with you. But anyway, it was something that I felt I wanted to do. I enjoyed doing it. I'd rather be there and then being in a pool or some camp or some picnic. And I think that's where my knowledge derived from, is being so in tune with the NBA at that time. And you know, fast forward a little bit, there were only three channels, and most of the games were not televised at all. But going back to the NBA, I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Why I wanted to talk about the NBA and the history of the NBA is because, again, as I told you, it was formed in 1946. And then, when the black players, which now I'm gonna give you a hint since I said, well, but I'm gonna give it to y'all anyway. The very first black player was a guy by the name of Earl Lloyd. Okay, he was played with the Boston Celtics. But here's something you guys don't know. Like, they made it a big deal that he was the first player, or Cooper, or whomever. But you know something? It really didn't make a difference because they were all signed within the first 3 weeks. They were all signed. So whether it be the first or the second, you know, who knows? Matter of fact, I have just a little note. I don't keep notes, but I have a little note, and it just says who was the very first, and I'm pretty sure it was Earl Lloyd. But yes, it was Earl Lloyd, and there was two other ones, and they were formed within the first 2 weeks of the NBA. And it's crazy, you know. But the fact is that they were all chosen within 2 weeks of the actual time frame. And again, I don't Google none, but they said Chuck Cooper. They said Chuck Cooper was the very first one, and there's debate as to who was first. Chuck Cooper, great ball player. He was a forward. Had back then, he did his thing. He was good. The fact that he was the first, or so-called the first, obviously he had to go and deal with the crowds, and all the very negative feedback from the people who attended the games. And it took a lot. We talk about Jackie Robinson, we talk about all that, but NBA ball players suffered through the same damn thing, and more so because the NBA ball players, if you notice, the games were closer. If you go to the NBA games, the crowd was a lot closer than they were in the Major League Baseball or NFL football. The crowds were right there. They could hear every word, uh, positive or negative. Most of them were negative. But Chuck Cooper was considered the very first. I say Earl Lloyd. Who cares at the end of the day? Because all three were signed within the first month of that same year, and they all contributed to the game of the NBA, and they made great strides for the league to introduce more African American players. And then we all know where it took off from there. So this show is like very emotional to me because this is where I claim like my fame, or whatever, because I know what I know, and I know, especially after talking with Sam Jones, which I'll get into a little bit later. But I know what I know, and I have a hard time dealing with some of the NBA players of today because they don't know. They have no idea what the players of the past have gone through and went through. And to me, it hurts me to the core of my heart because, you know, they've been blessed to make the money they're making, the endorsements they're making, everything and I don't begrudge them at all. You get every money you can. You get I don't begrudge them at all. It's just that you got to pay homage to those who suffered. Back then, again, well, why is it going? Because it's history. How can you go in the future if you don't know the history? So back then, folks, for those of you who don't know, most of the NBA ball players, white, black, Chinese, I don't care what, they had to have one or two other jobs to survive for their families, for their, the kids, for their livelihood. They had to take up upon other jobs. And I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Let's go back to about the '60s. There was a player by the name of I think you guys may know what his name is. His name was Oscar Robinson. Oscar Robinson, University of Cincinnati. I can tell you all the stats and all that. Stats, they mean something, but they don't mean nothing. Um, he came into the NBA and he knew what things were going to happen. And he felt that, not just African American players, but all players were being, I'm going to keep it real, slaves, because players couldn't go anywhere. They could only play with that certain team. If they couldn't play with that certain team, guess what? Get out, go, bye, see you later. Whereas some players might not fit into whatever team they got drafted by, etc. So Oscar Robertson said, well, look, let me check this out. You're not going to do this to us. I'm talking about blacks, whites, whatever. So back in the day, if you look back, you can see if I'm right or wrong. Please tell me if I'm wrong. In the 60s, the blacks couldn't eat with the whites couldn't eat with the blacks couldn't sleep with the whites couldn't sleep with the blacks. So this is where it gets hot. But anyway, what I'm trying to tell you guys, and there's a reason because it's Black History Month, I want people to never forget what the players of the past went through so the players of today can enjoy the fruits of their labor. So I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. As I said, the whites were there, the blacks were there. And Oscar Robinson said, hold up, hold up, hold up. There was no insurance. If you got injured, you had to pay for your own injuries. If anything happened, you had to pay anything and everything that happened on or off the court. And Oscar said, hold up, nah, nah, nah. This is not happening. This is not right. You owners are making all this money, and we out here busting our behind, and we can't even get insurance. We can't even get prescriptions. We can't get anything. We have to pay for our own insurance. We have to pay for everything. Oscar said, uh-uh, and it's not happening. So what happened in 1962, no Google, 1960, the very first NBA All-Star game was held at Boston Garden. Look it up. And Oscar Robinson got together with all the players and said, look, we can't do this. We want to make a stand? Let's do it now. It's a nationally televised game, the very first one. If we're going to make a stand, we're going to make it right now. So Oscar got together with the players. The majority of them said yes. There were some that said no. I won't say no names, but there were some that said, nah, we're going to play. Oscar said, no, we're not going to play until we get our needs met. And what happened was now the owners and the TV people were like, oh, we got to do it because it was an hour before game time. You heard me? 1 hour before game time. We got to do something. The game's nationally televised. We got to do something. Guess what happened? You already know. They said, oh, we got to do it. And because of Oscar Robinson, the players got insurance. They got the doctor's bill paid for. They got so many things that happened. Now, this was off the court, not on the court, off the court. And because of Oscar Robinson, who, if you guys look in the past, if you guys look it up, which I'm sure you will, if it wasn't for Oscar Robinson, there'd be no LeBron, none of them. Nah, it wouldn't happen. Because back then, you were entitled to only one team and one team only. You were basically slaves, for real. Look it up. See if I'm wrong. And because of what he did, he entitled everybody, not black, not just blacks, not just what, everybody who played in the NBA should be entitled to insurance, should be entitled to things that the owners were entitled to. And that's why, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, you don't hear too much about Oscar Robinson. But anyway, so going back a little further, after he did that, you know, all of a sudden, okay, we got that going. Okay, we got insurance. We got this, we got that. We got, medical bills paid. We got this, we got all good, all good. Great. Great for at that time it was called the NBA. It was great for the NBA. But then sometimes players like, damn, I've been on this team too damn long. I want to go elsewhere. Why can't I? Why can't I? Why can't I? Because the owners treated the players like slaves. True. I know I'm gonna get heat. It's facts. So Spencer Hayward said, "Well, I'm gonna go to court. I'm gonna do this." And Spencer Hayward ended up going to court. Spencer Hayward, he played at the University of Seattle. He was one of the best players ever, and he couldn't go to the NBA. He ended up going to the ABA. Look it up. Spencer Hayward, for those folks who don't know about the history of the NBA, Spencer Hayward, if he had started in the NBA, would probably be one of the best NBA ball players of all time. Spencer Hayward had like a 40-inch vertical leap. He's about 6'8". He played on the U.S. Olympic team, and he was a tremendous ball player. But you know something? He was like a Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? Like an Oscar Robinson. They knew what the right thing was to do, and they stood for the rights, not only for them, but for everyone else. And Spencer Hayward, y'all look him up. Please look him up. Uh, he got chastised. He got, man, it took him a long time to get into the NBA. And another guy I'll give you, Connie Hawkins. Y'all know about Connie Hawkins. Connie Hawkins, if y'all see George Gervin, you all see Dr. J, you all see all them. Who do you think was the first one? It was Connie Hawkins. Connie Hawkins had hands like this. Hawkins was the one that did all things with the ball. Connie Hawkins is the. You ask any NBA, well, any older NBA ball player, Connie Hawkins is the well. Let me back up a little bit. Elgin Baylor's right there too, but Connie Hawkins and Elgin Baylor were the two guys who could handle the ball. What am I called? Handle the ball like this. You know what I mean? With their big hands, and they would do all kind of tricks with the ball. And that's where Dr. J got his thing. That's why I keep talking about the history of the NBA, because it had to start from somewhere, right? It had to start from somewhere. Where do you think these guys got the idea to do what they do? It had to start from somewhere. And, you know, Dr. J would tell you it was Connie Hawkins. So you talk about Dr. J, who I had the privilege of playing against him. So, that's my heart. That's my dog. But anyway, Connie Hawkins is the one. That's why I want to keep talking about the history of the NBA, because, you know, when the NBA started off as well, they also had the ABA, which was the American Basketball Association as well. And the ABA, just to let you all know about the ABA, although I was too young and them games were never televised, so I just had to read and do my research. Back in the day, not now, because I know everything, but back in the day, they used to have cheerleaders, the red, white, and blue ball. They used to have the bands. They start the 3-point contest, the dunk contest. Do I gotta go any further? That's all ABA. Ask Dr. J. Ask what's my man's name? Spencer Hayward. You can ask George Gervin. You could ask David Thompson. They will all tell you that ABA was the starlight. They had all the innovations. The NBA took over the ABA and include all their ideas except the ball. Check it out. So anyway, again, the ABA ball, there was red, white, and blue ball, and the ABA was established, but they weren't making any money because the NBA at that time was doing relatively well at that time, and the ABA was trying. They had quite a few teams, but what they did was the NBA. Well, matter of fact, the ABA. Let me keep it real. The ABA wanted to join the NBA, And the NBA said, "Well, hold up, we're only going to take the top four money making ventures." And so the ABA looked at it and said, "Nah, we really don't want to do that." But in order to save the teams that were represented, they had to. Now there were four ABA teams that went into the NBA. I bet y'all don't know who they were. But anyway, I guess I'm gonna have to tell you all that. But there were only four ABA teams that went to the NBA because they were the most money generating teams. And the teams that folded, they went elsewhere, and the players end up either going to play overseas or lost their careers. And do you know who the four ABA teams that went to the NBA? Ah, I hope somebody tunes in and sees, because I bet you don't, you can't get, unless you Google, you won't know. So I guess I'll tell you. One of them was Denver. Another one was the Nets. Another one was San Antonio. Do you know who was the fourth? You guys probably won't know anyway. But anyway, it was Indiana Pacers. So anyway, those four teams end up uh, contributing to the NBA, and that's where you had Dr. J playing with the Nets. You had my guy, David Thompson playing with the Denver Nuggets. George Gervin playing with the San Antonio Spurs, and then you had a couple of guys playing for Indiana Pacers. There's a whole bunch of them. George McGinnis, and we can go on and on and on and on and on about that. But again, as far as the NBA history is concerned, the NBA went through a whole lot of problems due to the fact that they weren't money making at that time. They tried to survive, and although the owners were making money, the players weren't making any money. And the players were suffering. They had to go do two or three jobs. So you know, it's very tough for me because I know what I know, and that's why I appreciate the history of the game, and we'll get into the All Star game. That's a whole another ballgame. But the NBA, once the four teams from the ABA matriculated to the NBA, the NBA became a little bit more formidable. Although at that time, none of them really achieved that much success because San Antonio had to go through the Lakers and Indiana had to go through the Celtics, and Denver had, you know what I mean? So it was real tough for them to uh, succeed at that level at that time. But it was good for the NBA. NBA got more notoriety. Um, but one thing I will tell you, let me backtrack a little bit. Now we talk about the Celtics, even though I don't like the Celtics. Y'all know that I do not like the Celtics. But anyway, getting back to one thing, a couple of stories I have to tell you guys while I'm on the air is Red Auerbach. Now, Red Auerbach, if you know, with the cigar, the old cigar, the whole 9 yards, tough as nails, the whole 9 yards, and all true, very true. And he would do things against the opponent's team when they came in the locker room, making it too hot or too cold. That he did all that. He did all that. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is one thing I will say about Red Auerbach is when I told you guys about how the blacks could only eat on one side, the whites could only eat on one side, thing that they went to a restaurant. Nope, before they went to a hotel, and the owner said, "Well, those guys can't come in who were black." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, they're not allowed. They can go over there, but they can't stay here." Red Auerbach said, "Ain't happening. We are a team. We're going to stay together." Red Auerbach is the man for that, and I applaud him and the Celtics for doing that because otherwise, first of all, Bill Russell wasn't going to allow it to happen anyway. But I'm just saying he stood up for the African Americans of the Boston Celtics, and that's a true testament to Red Auerbach. And I appreciate that part of the Boston Celtics, and I appreciate the fact that Red Auerbach would do something like that. Back now, you can remember this is back when the riots occurred. This is back when it was off the hook. Y'all probably too young, This was crazy. And for Red Auerbach to make that stand at that time says enough about the man. And 1967-68, when he named Bill Russell the head coach of the Boston Celtics when he retired. Who does that at that time? Who does that? That's Red Auerbach. That's Red Auerbach. So I give my hats off to Red Auerbach. And I'm gonna tell you guys a little quick story. I gotta tell you this quick story. I was in my going to my sophomore year in college, and one of my teammates, one of my great friends, Mickey Gonzalez, who probably is the best shooter of all time coming out of New Bedford. He asked me if I wanted to go to the Celtics camp. I said sure, as a counselor. I said sure. So I go to the camp, right? And I'm nervous as hell. Now I'm a Division III ball player. You know, I did my thing, but I was a Division III ball player. I was all right. That was all right. But at the camp, there were 99.99999% all Division One. 6'10", 6'11", 6'11", 7 feet, the whole 9 yards. So I go my first day. I don't know what the hell was going on. I said, I'm out of my league. I looked terrible. I was horrendous. I they should have brought me off in a car or something because I was overwhelmed. I mean, I played. I didn't, but 6'7", 6'8". No, 7'1". Harvard, Yale, beat Maryland, all over the country. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here, bro. I said, I went back to back then it was a log cabin in Marshfield, Mass. It was log cabins. I had about not 12 kids, I guess, in my cabin. And I remember going to bed crying my, you know what, off. I said, what am I going to do? Am I going to leave or am I going to stay and try to do better? So what I did was the very next morning, I went out there and practiced and practiced and practiced. Well, in the afternoon, because the kids were doing whatever they were doing, trips or whatever they were doing, the counselors would play. You know what I mean? The counselors would play. And so uh, I can tell you some names you guys may be familiar with. So we're playing, and I'm playing, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. I'm doing okay. So we're doing all right, and then it came down. We had a point system where I forgot it was 11 or 15. I can't remember. I got dementia. But anyway, we playing to let's say 15. I don't. It might have been 11 or 15. One of them. So I remember distinctly me come down the right side. Boom. I remember this. I come to the block. I go to the right. I hit a shot off the backboard. Bang. We win the game. So I'm happy. I proved myself that I belong. And then as the players are walking off the court, I see Red Auerbach. And Red called me. He said, young fella, come over here. Young fella. And I went over to him. He said, no, son. He looked at me and said, yeah. He said, but you know what you need to do is you need to look like him. And at the far end of the court was a guy by the name of Al McLean, who's from Dorchester, Mass., who went to the University of New Hampshire, who was one of the top 20 scorers in the NCAA that previous year, and ended up being a fourth round pick by the Houston Rockets the same year that Hakeem Olajuwon got drafted. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time, of course. And then he looked at me and said, that's who you need to look like. Because I was stocky, you know what I mean? And he said, that's who you need to look at. I said, wow. And that night, we had a pizza and beer party at the cabins. And I'm here with all these Division I players, all these so-called whatever you want to call it. And he said, Mike, you don't belong to Division III, bro. You belong to Division I. You definitely belong with us. Which made me feel good. I ain't gonna lie, it made me feel good. And then the very next day, we had, I guess you could call it a clinic with Kevin McHale. Kevin McHale came out and he did a clinic. And I swear on everything I love, he was doing a clinic, and every time he shot, he hit. And while he was shooting, he kept talking. Never missed. Never missed. And he kept talking. I said, "What the?" I said, "What the?" I was like, "Wow." And I got started about Larry Bird, which I'll say in a minute. So after that, we all had to sit down with all the counselors and all the kids. And Ray Auerbach came and he stood in front of us and he had one ring on. He had one ring on. And you know, me being me, I said, Mr. Auerbach, what ring do you have? Now he won 11 rings, right? What ring you think he had? So I asked him, you know, me being me, I said, what ring you? He said, the very first one. And he had the very first one. And then at the end of the week, what they did was they chose the top 8 players or 8 counselors to play against the Celtics rookies that year. And then this was where I may be a little bit cuckoo. It was either David Thirdkill was the pick of the Celtics, or Bradley from North Carolina. One of them was the very first pick of the Celtics. I don't recall exactly, but one of them were the very first pick. I didn't get chosen to play against the Celtics rookies, but I was there, and it was a great time to see my guy, who I just told you about, Al McLean, getting 6 shots in a row against the Celtics rookies. He ended up being the 4th pick of the Houston Rockets with Akeem Olajuwon. He's been on my show, by the way, also. But I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of the history of the NBA and Red Auerbach. You know, I had the pleasure of meeting Red Auerbach. You know, matter of fact, back then I had one of my girlfriend at the time was like that, and Red Auerbach made some jokes about that as well as when we were leaving and all that. And then he had asked me about one of the guys from New Bedford. Name he called him Stevie Gomez. It was really Steve Gomes, but he said Steve Gomez. I remember that distinctly, and I remember Red Auerbach being cool, calm, collected, and what a pleasure to be around. He didn't have no cigar though. He didn't have no cigar, and I know he liked Chinese food. He didn't get no Chinese food when I was there. But I'm gonna give you a little quick story about Larry Bird. As I told you, we was at Camp Marshfield, Celtics camp, and we had log cabins. So all the counselors had their kids in log cabins. All right, so I had my kids, right? So you know, you get up in the morning, you'd have your breakfast at it was cereal. I'm keep it real. It was no, hey, it wasn't like it was cereal. So we're having cereal, right? And in the back, at the back row of the cabin was Larry Bird. Swear to God. And he was eating left-handed. And I'm looking at him, I said, he's eating left-handed. Hmm. That's why you see Larry Bird shooting left-handed. But anyway, getting back to that. So now, as I told you, we had kids at the camp. So Larry Bird's there, and the kids would go up to him and ask for autographs. He wouldn't give them one, not one. And that kind of turned me off about Larry Bird. He wouldn't give not one autograph. And if anybody thinks that I'm not telling the truth, anybody knows Larry, they'll tell you I'm telling the truth. And that really upset me to the core. Kevin McHale was great. And then when we had when we had the pizza and beer party, I can't tell you too much, but when we had the pizza and beer party, Kevin McHale showed up as well. And the subjects were great, those that were there, and it was a great experience. And I think that propelled me to get my confidence up to play going back to my collegiate season seasons. You know what I mean? Because I gained the confidence that hey, maybe I'm okay. You know what I mean? Because you never know when you're going against people you see on TV. You're like, oh, I ain't got it like that. But I guess I did. I guess I don't know. I don't know. We'll let those who know. But anyway, it was a great experience, and it was a great thing. And now, fast forward to that. Also, I'm going to try to talk. I'm trying to go into synchronization if I can. Again, we're going to talk about the history. Again, we're going to talk about Oscar Robinson. Without him, NBA would not be the way it is. And if you notice, Have you ever seen Oscar Robertson on TV? Have you ever seen him do any games? He did at the beginning. Have you seen him? You remember that big sit down they had with Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar. Let me tell y'all something. There's a method to the madness. He might have won the battle, but they won the war. Uh, Oscar Robertson right now, if you notice, you don't see him anywhere on TV. You won't. You don't see him televising any games. You won't see him do a damn thing because what he did was kind of break up the NBA as it was. And guess what they did? They penalized him for doing what was right for the players. And if you look back, tell me if you find out. Um, I think sometimes I think he does a game or two for uh, Indiana Pacers, maybe. I know Quinn Butler does, but you don't see Oscar. Now let me ask you a question. You know who was on that big sit down? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Hmm. Have you seen him coach any teams? Have you seen him doing anything in the last 20 years? Answer me. There's a reason. It's because of that sit down. Who would not want to have the at that time the NBA's leading scorer with a famous sky hook, and you couldn't teach your players? Who wouldn't want to have him? Give me an answer. You got players now who don't even know how to spell their name or on TV making all kind of money, and you got the guy who was the greatest scorer of all time at that time and can't get a job. You know why? I'm telling y'all why. That's why. Oscar Robertson took him a long time to get the recognition that he deserves. Remember, he's the king of what was the three, whatever you call it, whatever it is. Anyway, he's the king of that. You know what I mean? Points, rebounds, scoring, and he's the king of it. He averaged that for a season, and of course Westbrook broke it, which was hey, records are made to be broken. But Oscar did it back in the '60s. There was no three-point shot. It was a little difficult because Oscar, every time he went to the cup, he got hit. Every time he got beat up. So you got to take things in context. And again, I am by no means racist at all. I love people all walks. I don't care, but I know what they suffered, and I haven't suffered like that. I've never really had any issues like that, so I'm not here to talk about my own personal issues because I don't have any. You know what I mean? Because I treat people the way I want to be treated. So it never. But Bill Russell, wow, Bill Russell, mm, this is gonna be tough. Bill Russell played for the Celtics for a lot of years, and Bill Russell was very different. Bill Russell was not very sociable. Bill Russell was very hardcore, but Bill Russell knew how to win. And what he did was he held everybody accountable. And he said, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to block this shot, but I'm going to keep it inbounds so you guys can run the fast break. So you guys can do whatever you want to do. And then I'll follow. And then if I'm open, I'm going to get a layup. I'm going to get a dunk. I'm going to do whatever. That's where the defense came about because Russell used to always block shots, but keep it in play. Nowadays, you block a shot, you punch it into the audience. What does that do? What does that do? Whereas if you block it in play, keep the ball in play, you can run a fast break. Okay. That's the concept that Bill Russell was way before his time. He was more intellectual than probably anyone I've ever came across as far as the game of basketball is concerned. Because you sit down and, well, or you listen to him, his game was not about him. It was about bettering the team. And I think that's the reason why Red Auerbach chose him to be the coach of all the players of the Celtics. Guess who he chose at that time? If that does not tell you anything about Red Auerbach and about Bill Russell, and he still won a damn championship as a player coach. Think about that. Who was the last player coach to win an NBA championship? Think about it. So, you know, again, I go into my tantrums because I love the game so much, and the game has meant so much to me. And I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do a damn thing really. I played college ball. I did my whatever, and I got into broadcasting, and now I'm on a great network. But besides that, I never played the NBA. I never did all that stuff, so I don't know where it comes from. But I do know quite a few NBA ball players, particularly Pat Ewing, one of my good friends, and I have others as well. But I don't want to talk about again. It's not about me. But anyway, getting back to that. But one story I will tell you about Black History Month. This is cool. Y'all gotta check this one out. Black History Month. I'm gonna go back. I don't know the exact year because I'm not too bright. But going back, there was an article in the Boston Herald sports page, front page, and in the article, front page, you had every black player that ever played for the Celtics in a big square. All the pictures are like in a big square. You hear me? But there was one missing. So, me being me, so-called trivia king, I would do a basketball camp at UMass Dartmouth. Coach Brian Baptiste invited me to do his camp. I did it for 17 years, by the way. But this particular matter of fact, every time I go up there, he'd be like, okay, what you got for us today? And I would always give trivia questions, no Google, no nothing. And he'd be like, well, what you got today? So now I'm like, I'm coming ready this year. I'm coming ready. So the very first day of camp, we got a whole bunch of great collegiate players. And I'm talking my smack. As you know, I have a tendency to talk smack. So I'm talking smack. And I said, okay, I got one for you guys. No, let me back up. Mike, what you got for us today? We're on the lunch table around 12 o'clock, lunchtime. So I'm like, all right, I got you guys. I said, name the only player to be on a high school, NCAA, ABA, NBA, and Olympic gold medal. Who has that distinction? So I'm going to hold that off to the end. So I gave him that question. Now, again, no Google, no nothing like that. I gave him that trivia question. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I tell you what, if you guys get it right, I'll buy cases of beer, whatever. I'll buy a case of beer, whatever it was. They said, okay. So now it's Wednesday or Thursday. What they did was they called the Boston Herald, unbeknownst to me. They called the Boston Herald, the Boston Globe, whoever. I don't know who they called. I still don't know who they called, but they got the answer. And they knew the answer on Wednesday. So I'm still talking my smack. You guys, hey, I hope them beers are cold. I hope they're cold because I'm going to be ready. I'm ready. But they already knew the answer. I didn't know this till after the fact. So anyway, they're talking. So come Friday, it's pull up or shut up, right? So I'm like, all right, yo, pay up. And they hit me with it. All of them, not one, all of them hit me all at once. They knew the answer. I said, I got, and they got the right answer. Anyway, the answer to that trivia question, which made me a couple of bucks. The answer is I might hold off for a little bit, but the answer to that question was very good because there's no one that could ever. Now you heard Jabbar's record can be broken. This one can never be broken. This is probably one of the only NBA records that could never be broken. And I'm gonna wait on that one. I'm gonna see if y'all can get that answer because that's a good one. I'm not just gonna give that up real quick. But we're going back again back to the history of the NBA. The players had suffered so much. Bill Russell would win a championship and come home to find his house on fire, feces on his doors or on his fence or on his house. cross letting on fire on his lawn. You know what I mean? While his daughter was in the house. Why do you think Russell took over 20 years to come back to Boston? Why do you think that the Celtics put Larry Bird's statue up before Bill Russell? So I have a major problem with that. That's kind of why I don't like the Celtics. Red Sox, last team to hire to sign a African American player to a contract. So and I know it's tough because I'm from here, and I'm going to get a lot of heat, but it is what it is because I know what I know, and I know times have changed, and you got to move on, and I have, I have a little bit anyway. But anyway, I just know the facts about the history of the NBA, and I'm so proud of the NBA and what it's developed to. And they're trying to make changes, and they're trying to do the right thing, and they're donating a lot of money to charity causes, and a lot of players are doing so many things off the court. So I'm not here to put down all the players because that's not true. Some players are doing some unbelievable things, and they know that they have the platform and the money to do whatever they can, and that's what it's all about. It's about helping others instead of helping yourself. And there are a lot of players who do that. And oh man, I'm almost out of time. But anyway, what I wanted to do is again, I wanted to showcase the Black History Month and all the players. And I got about 3 minutes left. But tune in tonight because we got courtside view with myself, Koo McCain, Key Williams, Coach Dante, and we're going to discuss the NBA. And I can go further about the Black History Month. I can go further about the All Star Game. I can go further on, and also check out the gear. The gear is the bomb. But anyway, again, unfortunately, I'm running out of time because I got a big mouth. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to my show, Sports Corner with the Conn Man, on the Sports Wave Network. I'll be back next week. Hopefully with some great guests. If not, you got me. And it ain't that bad. But anyway, I want to thank Key Williams, Koo McCain, Jake Silver, and the Sports Wave Network. Tune in tonight, 9 p.m. live on the Sports Wave Network as we're going to do the damn thing. All NBA bound, courtside view from courtside. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care. God bless.